Everything began on what seemed like an ordinary night. Lord Narahira was on his way back when he suddenly encountered a strange ox cart that glided along the main road despite having no oxen pulling it. The soldier accompanying him warned that it might be a demon, and immediately after, Narahira's cart was flung aside, and he fell to the ground. The woman sitting in the ghostly cart said she was on her way to the imperial palace over the course of 7 days and demanded that they make way. The subordinate beside Lord Narahira, wanting to protect him, drew his sword and attacked the demon woman. But she transformed into a demon, terrifying them, just because of encountering that strange ox cart. The next day Lord Narahira was bedridden. He asked someone close to him, Hiramasa, to eliminate the demon on that ox cart, to ensure peace for the capital. Hiramasa went to the Onmyodo Hall to seek help from an Onmyoji. However, the people there mainly had duties related to astronomy, calendar observation, and divination. As for demons, they weren't sure they could deal with them. But an Onmyoji there introduced Hiramasa to a very special person, Abe Seimei. Rumor had it that this person was the child of a fox spirit. Hiramasa went to Seimei's residence, which was a house surrounded by flowers and wild grass, as if it were an abandoned plot of land. A man in white appeared behind him and said, "From the moment it blooms to when it withers, a flower is always called a flower. Isn't trimming a flower going against the laws of nature?" That man was Seimei. Hiramasa quickly realized this was the person he was looking for and politely bowed in greeting. Before he could finish greeting, Seimei disappeared, and in front of Hiramasa was only a green frog. Somehow, Lord Seimei was already standing behind him. Hiramasa felt like he was being toyed with. He seriously reintroduced himself and said he had an urgent matter that required Seimei's help. A white snake startled him and caused him to fall into the pond. Seimei told him to quickly get out of the water, then called for Matsu and Yoru, 2 little girls who appeared and brought clean clothes for Hiramasa to change into. After that, Hiramasa told Seimei about the issue he needed help with. 4 days ago, Lord Narahira, a military officer like himself, saw a mysterious ox cart. The cart moved without being pulled by oxen, appeared at midnight at the intersection of Suzaku Avenue and 8th Street, then suddenly vanished on 7th Street. Lord Narahira had been bedridden ever since encountering that cart. If things continued like this, disaster might befall others too. Hiramasa hoped Seimei could handle it as soon as possible. Seimei said it was just a trivial matter. But Hiramasa disagreed. Someone had already suffered the consequences. Seimei suggested that Hiramasa go ask the emperor for help. Talking with Seimei made Hiramasa very frustrated. He stood up to leave, saying that it was just a little demon woman, and he would handle it himself without anyone's help. Hearing that it was a demon woman, Seimei suddenly became interested in the task. That night, Hiramasa went to the place where the demon woman appeared and waited to eliminate her. Unexpectedly, Seimei also showed up. He said he had changed his mind and now wanted to protect the capital, though in truth, he just wanted to see what the demon woman looked like. Hiramasa said that the demon woman moved using an ox cart, and that when asked where she was going, she would answer she was headed to the imperial palace. That journey would take 7 days. It would be terrible if something happened to the emperor because of this demon woman. Based on Hiramasa's account, Seimei deduced that the place they were standing was not on the route the demon would pass through, according to the route to the imperial palace and the speed of the ox cart the demon used. Each day she would pass through one intersection, and today, the demon woman would appear at 4th Street. When they arrived, Hiramasa asked how Seimei intended to eliminate the demon woman. Seimei said a demon's soul must first be purified before it can be exorcised. As for Narahira, he had only been exposed to miasma, and would recover after a few days of rest. Just as expected, the demon woman arrived. It seemed that aside from the 2 of them who had come to wait for her, there was also another force present. A magic formation had been set up in advance, and numerous arrows were shot at the cart the demon woman was riding. So it turned out that was Narahira. He said he didn't need the help of a fox spirit's child, and that he would personally take revenge and eliminate the threat to the capital. A giant hand reached out from the burning cart, grabbed Narahira, and burned him alive. When his subordinates tried to rush in to rescue him, they were attacked by a white dog. However, the dog, as well as the demon woman, didn't attack Hiramasa. Seeing him running out with a sword, the two dogs, one black and one white, and the cart turned in the opposite direction and gradually disappeared. It was truly unfortunate that Narahira had been too hasty and thus couldn't preserve his life. The next day, the emperor told Hiramasa and Seimei that tonight they should attack the ox cart after regrouping at the Suzaku Gate. Hiramasa thought that he was the reason the demon woman had appeared. A few days prior, he had received a strange letter delivered by a dog. That dog looked very similar to the one accompanying the demon woman they encountered the previous night. The letter said, "The love you gave only brings pain. If you never came, how could I ever overcome my sorrow?" But Hiramasa had never known any woman. How could someone send a love letter to him? Seimei speculated that Hiramasa wasn't the real target of the letter. On the day he received the letter, Hiramasa was serving in the imperial palace, transcribing a document written by the emperor. Perhaps the sutra he had copied absorbed the scent of incense, which led the dog to mistakenly identify him as the emperor. The real target of the demon woman was the emperor. Hiramasa went to see the emperor and said that he and Seimei would handle the matter thoroughly, and asked the emperor to order everyone to evacuate Suzaku Gate that night. The emperor thanked him for his thoughtfulness and promised to follow his request. That night, Hiramasa and Seimei arrived at the designated place to carry out the plan. Hiramasa brought Seimei a strand of the emperor's hair. Seimei told Hiramasa that no matter how many good deeds he did for others, if he got involved with Seimei, there would always be bad rumors in the palace about them. People said that looking into Seimei's eyes would bring curses. Perhaps the demon woman, too, was bound by a love curse and had thus turned to hatred. At that moment, the demon woman appeared. Seimei said he couldn't let her stay by the emperor's side. The demon woman asked whether the emperor had ordered him to exorcise her. She had lowered herself just to be able to see the emperor. Her grievance made her transform into a giant and ugly demon. Hiramasa tried to attack her, but was blocked by the two dogs accompanying her. When she seemed to lose all willpower, an image of the emperor appeared before her, causing her to retreat and avoid him, not wanting him to see her hideous form. The emperor approached, sat beside the demon woman, and apologized for making her wait so long. In the past, they had met by chance and shared many beautiful moments together. When the emperor left, he had promised to return. He also left her the two dogs he carried with him. Since then, she had lived every day in waiting and worry. Eventually, the anguish turned her into a demon. After hearing the words of encouragement and apology from the illusion created by Seimei, the demon woman was exorcised and turned into a purple flower. Although saving her was a good deed, Hiramasa still felt like he had deceived the demon woman. Lord Kane was an old man, both fat and lecherous. No matter how many women he slept with, he could never satisfy his desires. While he was sitting around lamenting why there was no unparalleled beauty who could satisfy him, a voice spoke up. A winged rat approached and said that someone could fulfill those desires. Hiramasa came to find Seimei again. Though he didn't want to see him, 3 days earlier, Lord Kane had summoned Seimei to his residence, but Seimei never showed up. That's why today Hiramasa had to bring Lord Kane to meet him. He said that Lord Kane was the most lecherous man in the capital. Whenever he saw a woman he liked, he would pounce on her regardless of who she was. He was probably just trying to get Seimei to deal with some grudge caused by a woman he wronged. And Hiramasa didn't want to go out of his way for someone driven entirely by lust like that. Seimei suddenly noticed the box that Hiramasa was carrying and asked what was inside. When the box was opened, to everyone's surprise, it contained the head of Lord Kane. Although the head had been severed from the body, it was still able to speak. Hearing what Seimei had said about him made Lord Kane feel like going mad. But now he couldn't do anything, not even drink water by himself. Kane recounted that he had heard a legend about a man who defeated the vermilion bird demon in a game of Sugoroku. Thanks to that, the man had obtained an unparalleled beauty for himself. Kane also wanted to experience, just once in his life, the feeling of sleeping with such an extraordinary beauty. Because of this, he had gone to find the vermilion bird demon himself to challenge him. Kane told the demon that he had a great desire for women, but not ordinary women. He wanted the body of an unreal woman, a beauty beyond this world. If he won against the demon, he would obtain the most alluring female body in the world. But the vermilion bird demon also wanted to know what Kane would offer in return if he lost, what kind of talent he would stake. In the past, a nobleman named Haseo had also challenged the demon, betting his literary talent in order to gain that extraordinary woman. Kane, however, had no such talent. All he could offer was his own body full of lust and desire as the stake in this gamble. The demon found the offer quite amusing and accepted Kane's challenge. However, on the night of the duel, Kane sensed that he was about to lose and fled before the game concluded. He neither won nor lost, but the demon still took his body. Seimei thought that, in that situation, the demon had already been merciful to only take Kane's body. Kane could no longer bear the situation. He had heard that a few days ago Seimei had exorcised a demon woman, so this time he wanted Seimei to help him eliminate the vermilion bird demon to reclaim his body. But Seimei said that the demon didn't threaten or eat humans, so he had no desire to exorcise a harmless creature. Lord Kane then came up with another idea. Let Hiramasa play Sugoroku with a demon if he won. He could retrieve Kane's body. Seimei told him that gambling was not the job of an onmyoji. Their duty was to study the stars and human physiognomy in order to cast spells and eliminate demons harmful to humans. Seeing that Seimei still had no intention of helping the lustful lord, Hiramasa spoke up and asked for help on his behalf. He said he would do anything to help Seimei defeat the demon. Hearing that, Seimei had no choice but to agree to help the lord. They decided that night, they would go to the Vermilion Gate to meet the demon. That evening, Lord Kane had no choice but to stay at Seimei's house, since if his household found out that he had lost his body due to his lust for women, he wouldn't know where to hide his face. Hiramasa asked Seimei what kind of negotiation he planned to make with the demon to get Kane's body back. Sugoroku was a game of great chance, and since they were playing against a demon, the odds of winning were even lower. The only way to win was by cheating, but that would be extremely dangerous if the demon found out. For this reason, Seimei wanted to change the nature of the wager a little. Hiramasa said that one night, he had passed through the Vermilion Gate and heard the sound of a beautiful flute. Though he couldn't see who was playing it, Seimei told the Vermilion Bird Demon that he wanted to play a different game instead of Sugoroku to win back Kane's body. At first, the demon didn't agree with the idea. He wanted to witness humans' reactions when they were on the brink of losing in a game of chance. That was when their true nature would be revealed, how they struggled due to their own greed. Seimei provoked the demon, saying that he had stolen many people's talents, but didn't use them, which was a waste. Seimei also said he would bet his own onmyoji abilities if the demon would let him decide the format of the challenge. The offer seemed quite appealing. The demon agreed to Seimei's terms. They arranged to face each other at the same place the following night. The Vermilion Bird Demon wanted to defeat Seimei and then use his onmyoji powers to turn him into an insect or whatever he desired. But Seimei brought Hiramasa forward to face the demon, which forced Hiramasa to train all day to prepare for the challenge. He tried many different games, from shell turning to board games, but none were successful. Despite trying all day, he couldn't make any progress. Seimei said that if things continued this way, Lord Kane wouldn't be saved. He advised Hiramasa to keep reminding himself that he would win. It was like casting a spell on himself, which would help give him the strength to face the Vermilion Bird Demon. Lord Kane's son, Michinaga, came all the way to Seimei's house to look for his father. Seeing his father's strange absence, he had asked Lord Kane's close attendants and been directed here. Kane told his son not to tell anyone about his situation, because if his wife or the emperor found out, he would be in serious trouble. Michinaga told Hiramasa and Seimei that even though his father had been blinded by lust, he still begged them to save him. Hearing such an earnest plea gave Hiramasa a new burst of strength. He continued practicing with Matsuchu and Matsuya to prepare for the upcoming challenge. That night, the two of them went to face the Vermilion Bird Demon. They stood on the rooftop and participated in a wrestling match to determine the winner. When he first heard about the game, Hiramasa was very displeased. How could he possibly wrestle with such a strong and burly demon? But after Seimei whispered a plan into his ear, he agreed, as Hiramasa had feared. Just one light grapple from the demon sent him sliding down the rooftop. It seemed like the demon had already won the match. But suddenly, Hiramasa found the demon's flute under the eaves. As it turned out, that was what Seimei had been aiming for all along. In researching the vermilion bird demon, all the materials mentioned that anyone who encountered him always heard a flute playing first. The beautiful sound that had drawn Hiramasa that night had also been created by the demon. Hiramasa was surprised to learn that such a beautiful sound came from a demon. Seimei guessed that the flute-playing talent had probably been stolen from someone else, like many of the demon's other skills. But the vermilion bird demon said that although he had stolen many other talents, the ability to play the flute was his own. In the past, he had played the flute many times at the Vermilion Gate. He had failed the imperial exams with only that talent, and no matter how well he played, he couldn't please people. No one recognized his skill. In order to succeed in life, flute playing wasn't enough. He needed many more talents. That obsession had turned him from a scholarly youth into a hideous demon who wandered into this land. On the night Hiramasa met him, he had stopped and harmonized with the demon's flute. The vermilion bird demon didn't believe this and wanted to hear Hiramasa play the flute to confirm it. Moreover, he wanted Hiramasa to use his own flute. When Hiramasa began to play, the sound completely surprised the demon. Seimei then gave the flute to the demon and had him play together with Hiramasa. Being able to show off his skill and be acknowledged by others finally fulfilled the wish he had long yearned for. And even though he didn't lose to Hiramasa in the wager, he still returned Lord Kane's body. The next morning, as Seimei sent Kane off, he advised him to rein in his desires so as not to fall into another trap like that again. Hiramasa came to find Seimei again clearly with another incident he wanted help with. Hiramasa said he actually had no intention of coming. Seimei also didn't want to take on whatever matter Hiramasa had brought. But Hiramasa asked Seimei to at least listen before deciding whether to help. Suddenly, a middle-aged woman arrived. This woman was Kum, a servant who worked for wealthy households. She knelt in front of Seimei and begged him to save her mistress. The mistress she was referring to was Lady Fujio. Kum had come to ask Seimei about a young girl who played the biwa, a girl Lady Fujio was very fond of. According to Kum, 3 years ago, when Lady Fujio's husband passed away, she had been devastated. Hoping to comfort her, her friends had introduced her to the young Lady Kujo. The girl's wonderful biwa solo performance helped ease some of the sorrow in Lady Fujio's heart. Not only was the girl incredibly skilled at playing the instrument, but she also carried a charming energy that made everyone who met her adore her. However, about a month ago, Lady Kujo suddenly stopped coming to play music with Lady Fujio. A female onmyoji had come to visit Lady Fujio, and immediately afterward, Lady Kujo reappeared. But now, she only came at midnight, and her complexion was extremely pale. Since then, Lady Fujio had started showing signs of being unwell. A winged mouse had come to Kum and told her that if she was concerned, she should go and consult Seimei. It seemed Seimei had already understood what the problem in this case was, and he immediately agreed to help Kum. He believed the one behind this incident was targeting him, and it was likely that something bad had already happened to Lady Kujo. He said he would go to Lady Fujio's residence that night to observe the situation. Kum warned him that Lady Fujio did not want anyone to see her, so he must be very careful not to be discovered. That evening, Seimei and Hiramasa went to observe Lady Fujio's mansion. Hiramasa didn't notice anything strange. Lady Kujo and Lady Fujio were talking very intimately, and the young lady's music sounded wonderful. Seimei said not to let those things distract them no matter how beautiful the music sounded. It was still just a spell. The purer the sound, the more easily the spell could take root in people's hearts. Although the two seemed to be enjoying their conversation, when Lady Fujio left, Kujo began showing signs of weakness, as if she was barely able to sit upright. When she left, Seimei got closer to examine the situation. He noticed a strong smell of incense coming from the girl. The path she had walked was also covered in strange soil, which also carried that same strong incense smell. After inspecting it for a while, Seimei concluded that he would return to this place again tomorrow. The next day, Hiramasa brought food for Seimei and Matsuchu and Matsuya, but ended up opening it and eating alone. which made Hiromasa a bit disappointed. Seimei explained that Matsu-chu and Matsuya were familiars born from wisteria flowers, not human beings. They only came to help Seimei with a few things. Hiromasa asked if Seimei didn't feel lonely living alone in such a huge mansion. Seimei said that he did feel lonely, but the essence of being human was to always be alone. He didn't care whether someone lived with him or not. As they were talking, the winged mouse reappeared. It led the two of them to a house atop a rocky mountain. This was the home of the female Onmyoji Kum had mentioned. Hiromasa was surprised to see that the Onmyoji was a young woman, much younger than what he had been told. Seimei warned him not to be deceived by appearances when he had met her previously. She had taken the form of an 80-year-old man. The woman invited them to drink sake, but both refused. Then she suggested they play the Songroku game like Lord Kane had done, in order to win over the girl he loved. On her roof hung countless rat corpses. These rats were used to create the winged mouse familiars, just like the one that had guided Seimei and Hiromasa here. Seimei said this woman was an Onmyoji who tricked people and devoured their souls simply because she was bored. Her name was Ashia Daman. She seemed to already know the reason Seimei had come, and immediately asked about the girl who played the biwa. Seimei suspected that Daman had used a soul reversal spell on the girl. This spell is used to return the soul of the dead to their body. In other words, Lady Kujo was already dead. The strange soil Seimei had found previously was the earth from the place her corpse had been buried. The overpowering incense smell was used to mask the odor of the decaying body. Why would Daman do such a thing to a young girl? She said it was because Lady Fujio had come to her, saying she wanted to see the girl again, even if she was already dead. That was why Daman summoned the girl's soul and manipulated her so her body could move again. But if things continued this way, Lady Fujio would have her life force completely drained due to prolonged contact with a corpse. Daman didn't care about that. She simply thought it would be interesting if the woman were to die because of a girl who was already dead. To her, it was nothing more than a game. She was the one who cast the curse, and Seimei would be the one to go around dispelling the spells she created. That way, she would have something to entertain herself with, while Seimei would be appreciated by others. The fact that she took human lives merely for amusement made Hiromasa extremely furious. Seimei wanted her to stay out of this matter, so that he could break the soul reversal spell and save Lady Fujio's life. On the way back, Seimei explained to Hiromasa that a curse was different from a spell. A curse is born from someone who desperately wishes for something, while a spell is what controls that curse. Seimei would have to make Lady Fujio realize that the girl Kujo was already dead, and only then would she understand that her wish was misguided. Only by doing so could the soul reversal spell be broken. The two of them arrived at the mansion and told Lady Fujio the entire truth, but she refused to believe what Seimei had said. However, she agreed to let them meet the girl Kujo that night. As always, the girl came to the residence to play the biwa. The lively way she spoke didn't seem at all like someone who had already died. Seimei wanted to perform an exorcism spell to confirm whether the girl was truly dead. When the spell resounded, Kujo was in tremendous pain, as if she were being burned by a blue flame. Hiromasa immediately stopped Seimei because he couldn't bear to watch such a horrifying scene. Normally, an exorcism wouldn't cause such pain, but because Daman's curse hadn't been lifted, the girl reacted so violently. Lady Fujio knew the girl had died, but still wanted to be with her, and the girl too wished to remain by Lady Fujio's side. Seimei told the girl not to pretend to be strong anymore because he had seen her pain and difficulty when moving in that body. Moreover, if the two of them continued like this, Lady Fujio would eventually die. The curse Daman used on them was paired, and it wouldn't be dispelled unless they both gave up their wishes. Kujo and Lady Fujio were truly close friends. Thanks to one another, they had found more joy and positivity in life. That was why they were so reluctant to part. But upon hearing that Lady Fujio might die because of her, the girl made the decision to leave so that the lady could live a healthy life. At that moment, Seimei's exorcism spell finally took effect and returned the girl to where she belonged. Hopefully, she would be able to live a better life next time. Hiromasa said that although Seimei was also an Onmyoji, he was much kinder compared to Daman. Mibu Tadami was a pitiful, emaciated ghost who wandered around the imperial palace looking worn out, despairing, and filled with resentment. That gaunt, sunken face of his always bore a trace of love. Tadami's lips constantly mumbled a poem. That night, Tadami attacked someone, so the court officials had to hold a meeting to discuss how to seal him away. Tadami used to be a well-known poet. During last year's spring poetry gathering at the court, he lost to Lord Kanemori and later died out of overwhelming frustration, becoming a vengeful spirit who now roamed the palace. Though Hiramasa sat far away to avoid getting involved, the other officials still came to ask for his help. Hiramasa refused to participate with them because he knew they would ultimately ask him to go find Seimei for assistance. As he walked outside, he happened to come across someone playing the flute. The melody was so beautiful that he stopped to listen. The flutist was none other than Lord Atsumi. Hiramasa had heard that Atsumi had left the capital to learn a secret tune, and he praised the piece, saying it was truly captivating. If possible, he wished he could listen to it forever. Together they went inside to meet the other court officials. Atsumi was surprised to see how close Hiramasa seemed to be with Seimei. Hiramasa said that he wasn't actually that close to Seimei. Everyone simply misunderstood and thought that if he asked, Seimei would agree to help. On the other side, the court officials believed Tadami dying out of spite was a sign of weakness in a man. But Atsumi thought that for someone who had put all their efforts into pursuing and mastering something, it was possible they could die of frustration if they failed, even when they were just one small step away from success. When Hiramasa returned, the other court officials immediately said that matters related to spirits and demons like this were not their concern. It was the duty of an onmyoji to handle such things. They wanted Hiramasa to go ask Seimei to properly take care of the matter, or he could go investigate the situation himself, observe whether Tadami was causing harm to people or the palace, and then decide whether to seek Seimei's help. This time, Seimei came to help Hiramasa on his own without needing to be asked. Seimei said someone had requested him to come and seal away the vengeful spirit in the palace. He asked Hiramasa whether he had ever encountered the spirit before. Hiramasa said he had not only seen the spirit, but had also met Lord Tadami when he was still alive. During the poetry critique gathering, at that event, the court ladies and nobles were divided into left and right factions, competing to see who could compose the best poems. They would assign each other topics to write poems on. Lord Tadami was a poet from the left faction, while Hiramasa performed musical accompaniment for the right faction. During the contest, Lord Tadami lost to Lord Kanemori. In Hiramasa's eyes, Tadami was a very good person, even knowing Hiramasa was on the opposing side. Whenever he saw him struggling with the performance, Tadami always offered enthusiastic help. Who would have thought that such a kind person could turn into a vengeful spirit? Hiramasa saw that Tadami truly loved poetry. He was still reciting verses even after death, so he couldn't believe Tadami was a malicious person. He asked Seimei whether they really had to seal him away, whether they couldn't just leave him be. Seimei said Tadami's spirit had been appearing in the palace for a year already, which would make sealing him very difficult. Just then, the vengeful spirit Tadami also arrived. Seimei tried using a spell, and a massive swirl of dark clouds formed in the sky, covering the entire palace. Just as Seimei had suspected, Tadami had connected with the palace's spiritual ley lines. If they tried to forcibly seal him, they might end up summoning an even more malevolent spirit. They needed to find out what regrets Tadami still harbored and slowly resolve them. The next morning, the two of them decided to go to Tadami's residence from before his death to investigate the cause. The caretaker there told them that after the poetry gathering ended, Lord Tadami had suffered from a loss of appetite. No matter how much they persuaded him, he refused to eat and just sat there reciting the poem that had caused his defeat. Day after day passed like that, and he gradually withered away, losing all vitality and eventually dying of starvation. Though he had lost many times before, he had never sunk into depression to such an extent. In other words, that poetry contest had truly meant a lot to Tadami. Seimei asked to take the belongings Tadami had left behind for research, but left it to Hiramasa to carry everything himself. Lord Tadami had been a very studious man. His possessions were nothing but poetry books. His rank at court wasn't high, and he likely lived a rather modest life. For people like him, the court's poetry gatherings were rare chances to show their talent and catch the emperor's eye. He had used all of his meager salary to buy materials and books to study poetry. One could say he had bet everything on that poetry gathering. Losing and missing the opportunity for promotion made his frustration understandable. Seimei said he might have figured out why Lord Tadami had become so bitter. Together, they went to see Kanamori. Seimei recited the poem Kanamori had used to defeat Tadami and said that the poem wasn't his own composition. Seimei had found that poem in an ancient poetry anthology that had been passed down for generations. At that point, Kanamori admitted that he had heard the poem from a vagabond on the road. He thought it matched the theme of love very well, so he used it in the contest against Tadami. He hadn't realized it was written in an old book. Perhaps Tadami had known that Kanamori had plagiarized it, but couldn't speak up during the poetry gathering. To point out in front of higher-ranking officials that the poem was from an old text would have been tantamount to calling into question their literary knowledge. Precisely because of that reason, even though he knew the truth, Tadami still could not speak out. On the way back, Seimei wanted to hold another poetry critique gathering to bring justice to Tadami, hoping that he could find peace and move on. He asked Hiromasa to find someone who could perform Tadami's poem without fear of spirits. Hiromasa immediately sought out Atsumi. As they were speaking in the imperial palace, Tadami passed by. Kanamori bravely ran up and confessed everything to Tadami. He wanted to compete again and promised to tell the emperor about his cheating that day and return the victory to Tadami. But instead of calming down, the vengeful spirit turned into a demon. Perhaps it was due to another reason. Kanamori then recalled that on the day of the poetry gathering, Tadami had encountered a man wearing a white hat. Perhaps that person was related to his death. The next day, news that Seimei had failed to exorcise Tadami spread throughout the palace. Many court officials said that after all, he was just the son of a lowly fox spirit. They also claimed he was better at flattering the emperor than using his onmyoji skills. Seimei, however, seemed completely unbothered by such malicious gossip. If he truly felt resentment from being slandered, he would have already unleashed a deadly curse on all of them. Thanks to the previous night, he had discovered that the reason Lord Tadami had spoken so bitterly was not because he lost to Lord Kanamori. It seemed he needed to investigate further to come up with a proper solution. While Seimei was reading some documents, a giant black cat suddenly burst into his study, followed by the arrival of Yasunori and onmyoji working in the imperial court. He came to inform Seimei that the emperor had ordered him to absolutely exorcise the vengeful spirit of Lord Tadami. Since Tadami's father was a poet, he might know the reason why his son died. Because of that, early in the morning, Hiromasa dragged Seimei along to Tadami's hometown to meet his father. Tadami's father, Tadamine, was a master in the world of poetry. Seimei showed him 2 handwriting samples with different brushstrokes found among Tadami's belongings. He pointed out that the samples written in darker ink were often the better poems. Seeing that his son's secret had been exposed, Tadamine had no choice but to truthfully confess to Seimei. He said that not all of his son's poems were written by him. Tadami did not have the talent for poetry, but he deeply loved it. Perhaps because of this, he had been exploited by a demon. A few years ago, Tadami's poetry had suddenly improved dramatically, which Tadamine found suspicious. So he followed his son and saw him frequently meeting a demon behind the mountain. But out of fear, he didn't dare tell anyone, not even his son, about it. It was highly likely that the love-themed poem Tadami had used for the poetry gathering had come from that demon. Who would have thought that someone like Tadami would plagiarize someone else's work? Seimei suspected that during the poetry gathering, Lord Tadami lost because of the poem the demon gave him. The demon, angered by that, may have taken Tadami's life. But they still had to find the demon to verify the truth. And it was possible that what Seimei needed to exorcise was the demon, not Tadami. At the tree behind the mountain, Seimei read a poem composed by the demon and commented that the poem was completely empty and meaningless. Enraged by the insult, the demon immediately appeared and rebuked Seimei for criticizing his poem. He said that an arrogant person like Seimei could never understand the deep meanings within those verses. Hiromasa asked whether the demon had been the one who cursed Tadami to death. But the demon had no idea about this. In fact, upon hearing that Tadami had died, The demon cried bitterly. He had no idea that Tadami was dead. All this time, he had been waiting for him atop the mountain. There was no way he would have harmed the only friend he had. In the past, Tadami had once been in such despair over his lack of poetic talent that he had considered committing suicide on that very mountaintop. It was this very demon who stopped Tadami back then using his verses. He asked Tadami whether he wanted to win at the poetry critique gathering, and said he would help him do that. At first, the demon only wanted to see whether his poetic ability was still relevant in the current era. But after spending more time with Tadami, he brought a new breeze into the demon's life. They became close friends, composing poetry together, sharing and encouraging each other greatly. Tadami entered the contest, and the demon composed poems based on the ideas Tadami provided. They worked together in perfect harmony. The demon was satisfied that his poems were being performed, and Tadami gained fame. Everything would have been fine. But at the Imperial Poetry Critique Gathering, Tadami wrote a poem on his own and submitted it. That poem lost to Kanemori's. The demon could have warned the Emperor that Lord Kanemori had cheated, but he did not. For that reason, he thought Tadami must have harbored deep resentment toward him. Tadami said he no longer wanted to write poetry together with the demon because he wanted to win on his own. The demon begged Seimei to take him to meet Tadami, as perhaps he was the only one who could dissolve the hatred inside him. That night, a heavy rain poured down, and as usual, Tadami wandered through the imperial palace reciting "The Tale of My Love." The demon called out to him. It seemed that lately, his mind had become more and more clouded. He could no longer remember the poem he himself had written, nor did he know that he had unconsciously harmed people. The demon asked whether Tadami had ended up like this because he hadn't helped him win at the poetry critique gathering. Tadami said that wasn't the reason when Kanemori recited the demon's poem. He was genuinely happy. He truly wanted to see whether the first masterpiece he had ever written on his own could surpass the work of a demon. However, he still couldn't win. He came up with the idea that he had to become a demon himself in order to challenge his friend. But he didn't have the talent to become a demon as he had imagined. Enchanted by the act of writing poetry and wanting to stand on equal footing with his friend, he had chosen to die. The demon wanted to compete with him one last time, but Tadami said that now his mind was empty, unable to think of anything at all. He also asked Seimei to exorcise him. He no longer wanted to remain here as a pitiful, vengeful spirit. Seimei granted Tadami's final wish. Neither the demon nor Hiramasa wanted this. They had hoped to reignite Tadami's passion, but it was already too late. Tadami had left this world forever. The task given to Seimei by the Emperor had also been completed. Hiramasa said that just moments ago Tadami had shown an intention to compose poetry again. Yet Seimei had exorcised him without hesitation. What a shame it was all for nothing, considering how he had always thought Seimei was a kind-hearted person. The next day, Hiramasa learned to play the flute piece of Lord Atsumi. He wanted to dedicate that beautiful tune to Tadami. He even acted as though he didn't know Seimei out of anger over what Seimei had done the day before. Throughout the capital, rumors were spreading about a strange girl. Unlike the usual gentle noble ladies, she spent all her time adoring insects. People said she was a true insect princess. That girl was Tsuyuko. Her father constantly reminded her that a woman's true happiness was to marry a good man, not to be obsessing over insects every day like that. But the girl didn't seem to care about his advice. Seimei was sitting by the lake drinking sake when Michinaga came to find him. He said he had a favor to ask of Seimei. Without even hearing what the matter was, Seimei immediately refused, saying he was very busy and didn't have time for trivial errands. Michinaga said that if that was the case, he would ask Hiramasa instead and return later. Upon hearing Hiramasa's name, Seimei quickly changed his mind. He now wanted to hear what Michinaga had come to request. First, Michinaga thanked Seimei for helping his father during the Suzaku demon incident last time. As for today, he was here because Lord Takabana Seinuki, the father of Lady Tsuyuko, had asked him to bring up a matter concerning his daughter. Since childhood, Lady Tsuyuko had been very different from other children. She did not behave like a noble young lady. She often went to the stream to catch crayfish, climbed trees to pick flowers, and caught insects. The young lady had a particular fondness for caterpillars and began keeping them as pets. Seimei found this girl quite interesting. However, due to the gossiping nature of those in the palace, some malicious people referred to her as an insect princess. Although she had reached marriageable age, the young lady did not pluck her eyebrows, wear makeup, or blacken her teeth. Lord Seinuki feared that if things continued this way, his daughter would never find a husband. In desperation, he turned to Daman for help. He went to Daman and begged her to do whatever it took to make his daughter lose interest in insects. Daman was deeply moved by the love he had for his daughter, but the method she suggested could cause his daughter much sadness. She wanted to use a poisonous substance to make the girl lose her desire to keep insects. What he needed to do was follow all her instructions. First, he placed an empty jar under his daughter's room to open it after 10 days. Then, he would bury the jar for another 10 days, and when he opened it again, there would be a small insect inside. He thought his daughter would not want to keep such an ugly insect. However, to his surprise, Lady Tsuruko was very interested in it. She found the creature adorable, named it Black Worm, and decided to keep it as a pet. From then on, the black worm grew day by day. From a small creature the size of a finger, it had now grown as large as a child. Seimei found it quite troublesome to deal with such matters. Kamo Yasunori, Seimei's older brother, came to find Hiramasa. He told Hiramasa that the exorcism of Tadami was directly ordered by the emperor. He also warned Hiramasa to be cautious when interacting with Seimei, because without the emperor's backing, those like him and Seimei, who were practitioners of Onmyoto, were seen as demons by the common people. Seimei personally visited Lady Tsuyuko's residence. Outside, many people were gossiping about her, but inside, she was happily sharing stories with the children about the insects they had found. She even named each of them. Upon seeing Seimei, she took him to visit her black worm. To her, the black worm was a mysterious creature, and she eagerly awaited the day it would break free from its cocoon. Seimei said that, in the end, it was a red worm, and when it broke out of its cocoon, it would become incredibly vicious. The red worm was a kind of insect born from poisonous substances, and once it broke out of its cocoon, it would curse anyone the person who raised it hated, until death. Lady Tsuyuko said that she did not hate anyone, but deep within everyone, wasn't there a malicious will? The red worm could sense this hidden thought. Seimei wanted to exorcise it right away to prevent future harm, but he remembered Hiramasa's words from the night he exorcised Lord Tadami. He told Tsuyuko that he would wait for the black worm to break free from its cocoon. If it truly turned out to be harmful, he would act to exorcise it. Tsuyuko was very grateful that Seimei treated the black worm with such humanity. While touring her garden, Seimei noticed she had grown a plant called China root and asked if he could take some seeds to plant elsewhere. As they were talking, the black worm suddenly flew to the trunk of a tree. Tsuyuko explained that it was spinning silk to make a cocoon. This meant that tonight they would find out whether the black worm was a harmful creature or not. Hiramasa, sitting and thinking about what Yasunori had said, was approached by Atsumi. Atsumi wanted to try playing the flute that the Suzaku demon had given to Hiramasa, but found that he couldn't play it. It seemed that, aside from the Suzaku demon, Hiramasa was the only one who could play the flute. Although Hiramasa knew that Seimei's exorcism of Tadami had been due to the emperor's order, he still didn't feel entirely at ease. Daman came to find him and said that she wanted him to accompany her to a special place that night. Seimei and Lady Tsuyuko sat together, waiting for the moment the black worm would break free from its cocoon. She confided in Seimei that she wore men's clothing not because she wanted to become a man, but simply because those clothes were more convenient for her activities. Her father came to visit, but she did not want to talk to him. She had heard the whole truth about the black worm. Her father also apologized for what he had done, but he explained that he only wanted what was best for his daughter. He had sought the help of the Onmyoji because he feared no one would want to marry her. However, Tsuyuko believed that she was not suited to be a wife. She felt happiness only when she could be herself. Daman also brought Hiramasa along. She was eagerly awaiting the moment Tsuyuko's black worm would break free from its cocoon. At that point, she planned to take the black worm and turn it into her own shikigami. Tsuyuko said that no matter how ugly the black worm looked, she would not hand it over to her. Daman said that it was created by the slander, false accusations, and isolation from those outside towards Tsuyuko. Furthermore, it contained the resentment and humiliation of her father, Lord Seinuki. Tsuyuko replied that although she was truly saddened and hurt by the things said about her, she would not let it affect her life. Moreover, she did not hate anyone that much. Seimei promised to help her if the black worm broke out of its cocoon and became a danger to everyone. Upon hearing this, Hiramasa sided with them and opposed Daman, not allowing her to take the black worm. As Daman and Seimei confronted each other, Seimei used a talisman on the black worm's cocoon and asked Hiramasa to play the flute. The sound of the flute seemed to speed up the hatching process of the cocoon. What was special about the black worm was that, although creatures born from poisonous substances were usually ugly, the black worm, nurtured by Tsuyuko's love, turned into a very beautiful butterfly, not harmful in the slightest. Hiramasa and Seimei resolved their misunderstandings and became close again. Hiramasa brought a basket of mushrooms to visit Seimei, hoping he would like the gift he had prepared. Hiramasa wished that Seimei would tell him that the gift was wonderful, even just once. But then he realized that Seimei had never even called his name properly. While lost in thought, a young boy ran out from Seimei's residence, bumping into Hiramasa and causing a jade scale to fall. The boy said nothing and quickly left. Hiramasa entered the residence with a basket of mushrooms, intending to drink with Seimei, but Seimei turned him down, explaining that he was busy with a task he had just taken on. A monk from the Byoin temple had begged him to identify the insects he had sent. As they appeared every morning in the main hall, when they were sent to Seimei, they had all died. The monk offered to give him a rare set of scriptures from Tianju in exchange for his help. Seimei asked Hiramasa why he had come to see him. Hiramasa suddenly asked Seimei if he remembered his real name. Seimei not only remembered, but also knew that Hiramasa was the emperor's cousin. If he knew this well, then why had he never called Hiramasa by name? In fact, Hiramasa had come today simply to keep Seimei company. He felt that living alone in such a large residence, Seimei must feel very lonely. Hiramasa asked Seimei about the green-haired boy he had seen earlier at the entrance. Seimei explained that the boy had simply come to ask for a talisman to help his mother give birth safely. If all went well, something extraordinary might happen tomorrow morning by the Kamo River, a rare event that occurs once in 1,000 years. Since Hiramasa was here, Seimei suggested they do something together, waiting until morning to witness the event. Compared to the boring insects the monk had sent, Hiramasa seemed much more interesting to Seimei. Seimei counted a total of 262 insects, some of which were very strange. Hiramasa wanted to drink with Seimei, but Seimei was still busy with the insects. Hiramasa said that every time he visited, he found the residence unusually quiet. Seimei responded that since Hiramasa had entered his life, it had never been as quiet as it used to be. Just as she mentioned this, Miss Tsuyuko ran to find Seimei. She wanted to find a spot in his garden that received the least sunlight to plant a special type of plant. Since the incident with the cicada larvae, she had been bringing rare roots, tubers, or seeds to Seimei's residence to plant. Hiramasa asked Tsuyuko about the black orb. Miss Tsuyuko quickly took off her hat, and the large black orb, thanks to Seimei, had become much smaller and cuter. Tsuyuko said she had finished planting the flowers in Seimei's garden, and next autumn, they would bloom in beautiful green flowers resembling noble hats. The plant was called aconitum, a poisonous plant, but if used properly, it could be a valuable herb to treat heart disease. Hiramasa commented that this flower was very similar to Seimei. He was also a good person as long as he didn't follow the emperor's wrongful orders. To Miss Tsuyuko, Seimei was like a medicine that cured her illness. Since she was there, they also took her to see the strange insects sent by the monk. Upon seeing them, she exclaimed that they were beautiful, as she had never seen such creatures before. Unlike Hiramasa and Seimei, who thought all the insects were the same, Tsuyuko noticed that each one had its own unique characteristics. However, some of them did indeed look exactly alike. It seemed that Seimei's mansion was hosting many distinguished guests that day. Lord Atsumi also brought a bottle of wine and invited Seimei to drink with him. The two of them leisurely drank wine while Hiramasa and Miss Tsuyuko were busy sorting the insects. Atsumi remarked that although Hiramasa was loved by many, he had very few friends. This was why, seeing his student close to Seimei, Atsumi was happy and proud. Hiramasa, on the other hand, just wanted to drink wine with Seimei. But Tsuyuko didn't want him to leave until the work was finished. Atsumi wanted Seimei to take good care of his student. Although people often said Hiramasa was the son of a fox, Atsumi believed he was a good person and would become a good friend to Hiramasa. Furthermore, it seemed that Hiramasa was always worried about Seimei. He often visited Seimei because he feared that being alone in the mansion would be very lonely. He even said that Seimei tried to push everyone away. Hiramasa accidentally stepped on one of the insects, causing a commotion in the hallway. Seimei and Atsumi came to check the situation. Strangely, after being stepped on by Hiramasa, the insect disappeared, and a strange Chinese character appeared on Hiramasa's foot. The character meant nothing. Everyone speculated that the character represented the emptiness when the insect vanished, or perhaps it signified the futility of their efforts up until that point. It could also indicate something forbidden or have another meaning altogether. There were a total of 262 insects. Upon hearing this number, Atsumi suddenly thought of something. That was 262 characters. Seimei called Matsu and Yoru and told them to prepare his letter to be sent to the Baienkiao temple. That night, the four of them sat by the lake, drinking wine and chatting. Hiramasa was surprised that Miss Tsuyuko knew Atsumi. She explained that Lord Atsumi shared her passion for plants, which was how they became acquainted. Lord Atsumi was very exceptional. He knew a great deal about many fields of life: music, poetry, archery. He could do almost everything. Hiramasa asked Seimei what exactly they were waiting for. Seimei replied that they were waiting for a response from the Baienkiao temple. At that moment, a letter folded into the shape of an airplane flew and landed in Seimei's hand. Just as Seimei had predicted, the true form of the insects was the Heart Sutra, a Buddhist scripture consisting of 262 characters, with 21 of them being the Chinese character, nothing, in the afternoon. Seimei had sent a letter to the Baienkiao temple about this. They replied that the sutra had been covered in dust in the sutra hall for a long time, and all the characters had disappeared from it. Since it had not been recited in a long time, the characters had turned into insects moving around the temple. The insects would only appear if the monks diligently recited the Heart Sutra more often. With that, the matter was resolved well. As for the insects, Miss Tsuyuko took them back as a souvenir. Hiramasa said that since he could only play the flute, he was envious of Atsumi for knowing so many things. But in reality, Hiramasa's flute playing was also quite admirable. The sound of his flute, combined with Seimei's incantations, produced remarkable results. It had even saved the black orb. Miss Tsuyuko wanted Hiramasa to play the flute for them, and the music was deeply moving. After sending Miss Tsuyuko and Lord Atsumi off, Hiramasa and Seimei continued to drink together. Seimei reflected on the first time he met Hiramasa and thought that he shouldn't have responded to him. If he hadn't, Hiramasa wouldn't have stuck to him like this. Seeing Hiramasa nod off, Seimei asked Matsu and Yoru to take him to his room to sleep. The next morning, they went to the riverside to witness the once-in-a-thousand-years event that Seimei had mentioned earlier. After waiting for a while, they saw 3 dragon mothers flying up from that section of the river. At this point, Hiramasa realized that the boy he had met at the mansion gate the previous day had come to ask for a safety talisman for his dragon mother. Today, his mother had successfully given birth and was returning to her work of making rain for the capital. After admiring the rainbow, just as they were about to leave, a white smoke suddenly appeared. A masked demon holding a piece of paper came and tried to harm Seimei. Although Hiramasa tried his best to cooperate with Seimei to resist, this demon seemed quite powerful. He knocked Seimei unconscious. Hiramasa carried Seimei back to the mansion, where Lord Yasunori, Seimei's senior, was already waiting. They took Seimei to his room. Hiramasa told Yasunori that an insect from the demon's hand had crawled into Seimei's mouth. Yasunori immediately recognized it as the red-toed larvae, but it looked very different from the larvae Tsuyuko had raised. Hiramasa rushed to find Tsuyuko, hoping she could help Seimei. When Yasunori tried to touch Seimei, the Matsu and Yoru tried to stop him, but they were just familiar spirits, and they were quickly turned into petals by Yasunori. Yasunori touched Seimei's neck and recited some incantation. seemingly trying to trap the red toad larvae within Seimei's body. Just then, Tsuyuko and Hiromasa arrived in time. Yasunori said he wanted to put Miss Tsuyuko's black orb into Seimei's body. It would fight the red toad larvae of the demon. He said he wasn't sure whether it would save Seimei, but they had to try. He asked Tsuyuko to recite an incantation to put the black orb into Seimei's body. After that, they could only wait for the two insects to battle within Seimei's body. If they were lucky, Seimei would wake up. But if not, he would die. Hiromasa held Seimei's hand to encourage him to keep fighting. But as he held Seimei's hand, Hiromasa saw a vision in his dream. It was of when Seimei was a child. At that time, he had been accepted as a disciple by Yasunori's father, Tadayuki. Back then, he was often bullied by his classmates. They told him that since he was the child of a fox, he should go back to the mountain and not stay there. That night, Seimei and 3 other students were walking with Tadayuki when they noticed something strange. Seimei immediately reported it to his master. Tadayuki instructed everyone to hide under the cart and remain silent while he would chant an incantation to drive away the demon. While hiding under the cart, one of Seimei's classmates kept making noise by fiddling with a rosary. Seimei wanted to remind him, but the classmate scolded him, calling him the child of a fox and refusing to let him touch him. The noise attracted the demon, which attacked the classmate. The other 2 students witnessed the terrifying scene and tried to flee, but were also devoured by the demon. The next morning, rumors spread throughout the school that Seimei was the only one who survived the encounter with the demon. They thought he had killed his classmates because he was not an ordinary child. In their eyes, Seimei was a hated freak. As he grew older, his master passed away, and from then on, Yasunori's gaze towards him gradually became filled with resentment. Lord Masunaga took the opportunity when Seimei was feeling down to comfort him and establish a closer relationship. Masunaga said that he could see that Seimei's feelings for his master were more than just teacher-student. It was like a father-son bond. Later, Masunaga asked Seimei for a very important favor. He was trying to curse his father to death using an incantation. He admitted that he knew it was unacceptable, but he had no other choice. His father had tormented his mother for many years, and if he remained in charge, their family would be ruined. Masunaga had used the incantation to kill his father, but since he was still learning, it didn't work. He wanted Seimei to help reinforce the curse so that it would have the full effect. With his conscience, Seimei couldn't accept this request. However, he promised not to reveal that Masunaga had used an incantation to harm his father. Despite the promise, Masunaga still sent people to assassinate Seimei. Angered by this, Seimei went to confront him. Masunaga claimed that Seimei was the one who had wronged him first, saying that even though they were friends, Seimei hadn't helped him. Seimei retorted that he had never had a friend like that. From then on, Seimei moved to live alone in the large mansion. One afternoon, while drinking, 2 wisteria petals, one purple and one white, fell on his shoulders. Feeling a connection to these petals, Seimei used an incantation to turn them into familiar spirits to stay with him. Indeed, he had always been very lonely. In Seimei's dreams, Hiromasa appeared, and they shared many memories together. Seimei seemed to have opened up and accepted this reluctant friendship. Seeing Seimei's painful past, Hiromasa cried heavily, moved by his friend's suffering. Hiromasa decided to go to Daman and ask for help. Daman told him that there was a god in the Tai Mountain who controlled human lifespans. If they asked the god to extend Seimei's life, they would have to sacrifice something very precious. Hiromasa planned to play one last tune on his flute and then go to ask the god for Seimei's extended life. Yasunori wondered how Seimei could live for so long with 2 kinds of insects inside him. He asked Tsuyuko to watch over Seimei while he went outside. After abandoning his flute-playing abilities, Hiromasa remained troubled, feeling some regret. Seimei, however, was slowly waking up thanks to Hiromasa's sacrifice. As soon as he regained consciousness, Seimei vomited out a spherical object, which seemed to be the remnants of the red toad larvae that had attacked him the previous day. Everyone, especially Hiromasa, was very worried about Seimei's health. Once it was confirmed that Seimei was fine, Hiromasa felt relieved. Lord Yasunori was also there, and Seimei thought that he had saved him. But Yasunori said he hadn't done anything. Regardless, Seimei apologized for troubling him. Yasunori said he would report the incident to the emperor. and that Seimei didn't need to go to the palace for now. As he left, Yasunori lamented that Seimei was indeed a very lucky person. Seimei wondered why he had survived even after being attacked by the red toad larvae. Tsuyuko explained that it was the black orb that had pushed the larvae out of his body. She then remembered that Hiramasa had gone outside yesterday. He said he felt a bit suffocated, so he went out for a walk. Atsumi also defended Hiramasa to prevent the truth about him trading his flute skills to save Seimei from being exposed. Hiramasa apologized to Seimei, saying that if he had played the flute that night, Seimei wouldn't have been attacked. He explained that he had been distracted by a strange noise, which had caused him to lose focus and be unable to play the flute. Seimei told him not to apologize anymore. What they needed to do now was think about the demon from that night. He believed that the demon was a half-demon, half-human, meaning that it had transformed into a demon while still alive. The demon had only one horn, which indicated it hadn't fully transformed. At that moment, the demon could still take on a human form, making it harder to deal with than other demons. A person who becomes a demon in extreme circumstances may have their hatred and resentment surpassing all control. Seimei wanted to seek out Daman to inquire about the demon that had attacked him. As no one but Daman could teach him how to create the red toad larvae, he wanted to call upon the Matsu and Yoru for assistance, but couldn't find them. Tsuyuko explained that because of his weakened health, they had disappeared. Seimei found this strange, as familiars typically wouldn't vanish without his command. Tsuyuko suggested that the demon might actually be Lord Yasunori. She had witnessed many odd behaviors from Yasunori while Seimei was unconscious, and she wasn't sure whether he truly intended to help Seimei. Hiramasa wondered why Yasunori had used the black orb. Perhaps he wanted to show that he had tried to help. But he hadn't expected the orb to defeat the red toad larvae. Seimei asked if Hiramasa had called Yasunori, but Hiramasa replied that Yasunori had been in Seimei's mansion before Hiramasa brought him back. Everyone suspected that Yasunori might have been the one who harmed Seimei, but Seimei still wanted to meet with Daman to confirm the truth. He couldn't believe that his senior brother harbored such hatred for him. Seimei used an incantation to summon the dark moths again, but when he searched everywhere, he still couldn't find Daman. Meanwhile, rumors spread in the Imperial Palace about Seimei, claiming that he had been cursed and saved by Yasunori. This presented a good opportunity for Seimei's enemies to bring him down. Hiramasa informed Seimei about the rumors, and the emperor summoned him to the palace to question him. The officials continually criticized Seimei, saying that if he had been defeated by a mere insect, he wasn't worthy of his position. Only Lord Kane believed in Seimei and spoke in his defense, calling him the greatest onmyoji of all time. The officials wanted to organize a contest between Seimei and another onmyoji to prove his abilities. Seimei found this idea boring and bluntly refused to participate. However, when he learned that his opponent would be Daman, he could no longer refuse. Daman said that if Seimei won, she would tell him the identity of the demon that had attacked him that night. They then competed in a contest of incantations, using powerful techniques that astonished everyone in the palace. But just as the battle was reaching its peak, a group of demon heads appeared, attacking all the onmyoji and even the emperor. Everyone panicked and fled. Seimei created a barrier to hold the demons back, allowing everyone to escape. He intended to work with Hiramasa's flute playing to defeat the demons, but Hiramasa said he hadn't brought his flute with him that day. Seimei then used his incantations to eliminate the demon heads. Witnessing this, it seemed that Seimei's abilities were finally recognized by everyone. As Seimei was leaving, he still wanted to ask Daman about the demon who had used the red toad larvae on him that night. The demon heads from earlier were also created by Daman to restore Seimei's honor. Daman said she would reveal the true identity of the demon once Seimei defeated her. However, she offered some hints. The demon was very concerned about Seimei. He had come to find Seimei during a stormy night, because, after not hearing the familiar sound of the twin flute, the Crimson Sparrow demon went to Hiramasa to ask why he had stopped playing the flute. Hiramasa explained that he had sacrificed his talent to save Seimei's life. Despite this, the Crimson Sparrow demon still wanted Hiramasa to keep the flute, hoping he would one day play it again. Hiramasa overheard the officials in the palace complaining about Seimei appearing by their bedside in the middle of the night. only to disappear suddenly. It seemed like Seimei was trying to find the person who had cursed him nearly to death. He had visited those he suspected of harboring hatred for him. The officials wondered who in the palace could possibly harbor such deep resentment towards Seimei. This made Hiramasa recall Tsuyuko's words about Lord Yasunori. Hiramasa asked Seimei how he had known in advance that Seimei would be in danger and had been waiting at the mansion. Seimei explained that every onmyoji, like him, possessed a unique ability that ordinary people like Hiramasa couldn't understand. He further clarified that if Hiramasa thought he was the one who harmed Seimei, that belief might be a mistake. Seimei was currently at the onmyoji's residence, preparing something for the knight's quest to find the demon. Hiramasa walked in, and Seimei told him that the demon hunting mission would begin tonight. He was preparing something for that purpose, and would need Hiramasa's flute playing to cooperate with him. However, Hiramasa seemed uncomfortable with this request. Hiramasa then asked Seimei about the recent complaints from various officials, saying that Seimei had been disturbing them during the night. Seimei admitted that it was true. He explained that the red toad larvae were certainly connected to Daman, so he had sent his familiars to investigate which of the officials might be involved. He also wanted to use this opportunity to warn the officials about Daman, as the person who hated him seemed to be everywhere. At that moment, Lord Kane arrived to ask Seimei about the threat he had made against him. The officials and the emperor wanted to hold a large ritual to drive away the demons, but Seimei disagreed. He believed it was unnecessary, stating that the demons were merely created by someone to scare people and had no intention of assassination. He asked permission to leave afterward to avoid the troublesome officials. As Hiramasa was walking around the palace, he heard a beautiful flute playing. It was Atsumi, who had been playing the flute. Hiramasa stopped to listen for a long time, and just as he was about to leave, Atsumi called him back. He apologized for playing the flute in front of Hiramasa, and asked if Hiramasa didn't feel sorrow for losing his ability to play the flute because of Seimei. After all, Hiramasa had always been the best flutist in the palace. However, Hiramasa replied that it wasn't as important to him as Atsumi thought. He had never compared his talents to others. He played the flute simply because he enjoyed it. While it was true that he would miss playing the flute, the fact that he had saved Seimei's life made it worthwhile. Hiramasa also saw this as an opportunity to pursue something new that he enjoyed, like studying something useful. Atsumi then asked Hiramasa for the twin flute given to him by the Crimson Sparrow demon. Hiramasa refused, saying that the flute was very special, and he couldn't give it to anyone else. He would keep it with him, and perhaps one day, many years later, he could play it again. As night fell, Seimei and Hiramasa went to a tree to perform a ritual to awaken the red toad larvae that had attacked Seimei earlier. Hiramasa was worried that the creature would attack Seimei again once awakened, but Seimei reassured him not to worry. He was recreating the creature to lead him to the one who had created it. Seimei was eager to find out who hated him so much. They chased after the red toad larvae into a dense forest. Along the way, Hiramasa wondered why Seimei never called him by name. Seimei, focused on tracking the larvae, merely remarked that Hiramasa was too sensitive. A mist appeared, causing them to become separated. Seimei ended up where Yasunori was standing, while Hiramasa found himself face to face with the actual demon. Yasunori explained that he was not the one who created the red toad larvae. Though he disliked Seimei, he would not be foolish enough to create a demon just to kill him and risk turning himself into a demon. He despised Seimei, but when he brought Seimei back earlier, his father had ordered him to protect Seimei, so he couldn't go against his father's wishes. He also explained that the black orb he had used on Seimei hadn't done much, and he didn't even know why Seimei had survived. However, Yasunori suspected that the target of the red toad larvae wasn't Seimei, but someone else. Seimei, realizing the full situation and understanding that Hiramasa was in danger, quickly ran to find his friend. The demon Hiramasa encountered was actually Atsumi. He confessed that he had always been jealous of Hiramasa's flute-playing skills. The red toad larvae had been created to harm Hiramasa, but Seimei had saved him. Despite that, Atsumi felt some satisfaction in knowing that, to save Seimei, Hiramasa had lost his talent. After a long search, Seimei finally found Hiramasa. But unfortunately, the demon pierced Hiramasa's chest with a sword. Seimei quickly used a charm on him, but the demon blocked it and fled. Seimei rushed to help Hiramasa, who apologized for not staying close to him, believing he wouldn't survive. Hiramasa, before he passed, asked Seimei to save Atsumi, the demon, for the first time. Seimei called Hiramasa's name. Seimei then went to seek answers from Daman regarding Atsumi. Daman remarked that Seimei seemed more human this time compared to their last meeting. She asked if Seimei wanted to kill Atsumi to avenge Hiramasa. Seimei questioned why Daman had helped Atsumi become a demon. Daman explained that it was unusual to see Seimei so close to a human, and she wanted to see how Seimei would react if something happened to that person. She had only wanted to play with the situation, never expecting that Hiramasa would truly die. However, she clarified that Hiramasa's death was not entirely her fault. The real cause was Seimei's lack of attention and caution. There had been several omens, but Seimei hadn't noticed them. Seimei disagreed, saying it wasn't his fault. Hiramasa never told him what he was going through, so he couldn't be blamed. Everything was a result of Hiramasa's own decisions. Daman criticized Seimei's view of his friend, calling it harsh. Seimei responded that Hiramasa wasn't his friend. However, for Hiramasa, Seimei was a very precious friend. When he was struggling between life and death, Hiramasa had sacrificed his flute-playing abilities to save him. Seimei knew that losing a friend was far more painful than losing his ability to play the flute. Thanks to Hiramasa, Seimei had lived to this day. Seimei was deeply shocked by the information he received from Daman. On his way back, he thought a lot about Hiramasa, the first person who had believed in him, trusted his abilities, and understood his loneliness. Lady Tsuyuko was also heartbroken when she learned that Hiramasa had passed away. A servant in the house noticed blood stains on Atsumi's clothing and went to fetch new clothes for him. Atsumi hadn't expected things to become so serious. A demon in the nearby flower bushes reminded him that now he could play the flute he had received from Hiramasa. He was now the best flutist in the capital. Atsumi intended to throw the flute into the canal nearby. But at that moment, the demon appeared under the water, almost like a second personality inside him. Atsumi blamed the demon for Hiramasa's death. The servant who was preparing clothes for Atsumi accidentally saw his half-demon form and became terrified. The demon within Atsumi ran out into the street, causing panic among the people who witnessed it. Atsumi wanted the demon to leave his body, but it was impossible. The demon told Atsumi that he should have killed Hiramasa when the red toad larvae appeared. Atsumi had gone to Daman, but she didn't want that outcome. She had devised a plan to lure Hiramasa into sacrificing his talent to save Seimei. However, even after losing his talent, Hiramasa hadn't changed at all. The demon, filled with envy, felt that Atsumi was still attached to the human world, and it resented him for it. Atsumi, however, thought differently. He and Hiramasa had been friends for a long time, and he had even taught Hiramasa how to play the flute. After Hiramasa died, Seimei was also deeply saddened. He even experienced hallucinations where he imagined Hiramasa was still sitting and drinking with him. Yasunori came to find Seimei, giving him a charm containing Hiramasa's soul. He revealed that when he realized the demon might have been reaching out to Hiramasa, he secretly placed the charm to protect him. However, the charm could only protect Hiramasa's soul. It wasn't certain that Hiramasa had died, but Seimei couldn't do anything to revive him since his heart had stopped beating. Seimei said there was still one way. He would go and plead with the Taishan Fujun, the god of life and death, to save Hiramasa. Yasunori questioned whether Seimei truly understood what he was saying. Taishan Fujun was a god who governed human life. Not only was it very difficult to make such a plea, but even if it was granted, the price would be extremely high, possibly even Seimei's own life. Yasunori asked if Seimei died to save Hiramasa, would he really be happy? He advised Seimei to give up, to let Hiramasa's soul return to his body so that he could pass away peacefully. Seimei refused to believe in such things. He believed everything that happened was his fault, and he would definitely not let Hiramasa die. The demon inside Atsumi believed that everything was Hiramasa's fault. He couldn't forgive the one who had stolen the secret flute melody, a melody Atsumi had spent so much effort learning. Was Hiramasa deliberately showing off that only he could play the flute of the Phoenix Demon? Atsumi's anger transformed him into a true demon. Not long ago, Atsumi was trimming branches in the garden when he felt sorrowful, believing he could never be as talented as Hiramasa. He thought that perhaps he would never be able to play the Phoenix Demon's flute in his lifetime. Suddenly, a voice spoke next to him, asking if he would continue to live his life as an inferior being. The voice suggested he should steal everything from Hiramasa and make it his own. Didn't he feel any hatred for Hiramasa? Atsumi had never thought of such a thing. To him, Hiramasa was a very special friend. The demon's voice pointed out that Hiramasa was a genius, but that very talent was trampling on the pride of others, cutting away the flower that was speaking. Atsumi looked down into a pool of water and realized he had turned into a demon. The demon told him he could only choose one, the flute or his friendship with Hiramasa. In the end, Atsumi chose the flute. Hiramasa had died, and now no one could surpass him in playing the flute. Atsumi later encountered Seimei in the forest. Seimei declared that he had come to kill Atsumi. He could not honor Hiramasa's dying wish, as Atsumi had become an evil demon. However, just as Seimei was about to strike, he noticed tears streaming from the corner of the demon's eye. Perhaps, deep inside, Atsumi still suffered from what he had done. Because of this, Seimei decided to spare him. Seimei then took a very risky action. He went to steal Hiramasa's body. It seemed that he had some plan to revive Hiramasa. Yasunori thought this idea was very dangerous. Seimei knew it was risky, but he believed that only Hiramasa could save Atsumi. Seimei had asked the man to help prepare for this important plan. She said she only lacked a few ingredients, and once they were ready, she would complete the task he entrusted to her. However, she still believed Seimei's actions were crazy, as if he had lost his mind. Lady Tsuyuko thought Seimei wanted to turn Hiramasa into a Shikigami, but Seimei explained that turning him into a Shikigami wouldn't allow them to communicate. He was determined to try to revive Hiramasa. Before, he had made a secret deal with Daman. This time, their meeting had gone much better than before, and Daman had agreed to help. However, it was uncertain if Hiramasa could be revived, and they would only know once they tried. Lady Tsuyuko wanted to accompany Seimei to the ritual, but he stopped her. He told her that the place was too dangerous and, more importantly, that when Hiramasa was revived, at least one of his friends would need to still be alive. They carried Hiramasa's body to the royal sacrificial ground, where the officials were holding a ceremony for the emperor's peace. Everyone was shocked when Seimei appeared. He announced that he had come to preside over the ceremony, but it would not be a normal peace ceremony. Instead, once this ritual was completed, it would ensure the peace of the entire capital for a long time to come. The officials immediately voiced their concerns, accusing Seimei of stealing Hiramasa's body. Seimei opened the mat covering Hiramasa's body, causing everyone to retreat in fear. He stated that he was offering the body to Taishan Fujun, and without wasting any more time, he began chanting. At that moment, no soldier dared to interfere with Seimei's attempt to revive Hiramasa. He told the emperor that he was doing this for the safety of the capital, and would ensure a peaceful city in return. Official Kane agreed that Seimei should carry out the ritual, and Yasunori also supported this decision. The emperor acknowledged that Seimei had previously rid the land of demons and, as such, decided to grant him full authority over this ceremony. Seimei began chanting his spell, and a dark mist covered the palace. Hiramasa sat up and began playing his familiar flute tune. Atsumi, upon hearing it, immediately rushed to the scene. The courtiers were terrified when they saw his demonic form. It turned out that Seimei had set a trap to lure him there. The Phoenix Demon had been summoned to play the flute in place of Hiramasa. Before leaving, Seimei had instructed the demon to ensure that either Hiramasa's life or his flute would remain. Seimei admitted that he had to lure Atsumi there, but his real opponent wasn't Atsumi. The one the demon truly needed to fight was Hiramasa. As Seimei dodged Atsumi's attacks, he began setting up a battlefield. Demons suddenly appeared from the sky, attacking the courtiers. Yasunori and Seimei tried to hold them off, while Daman worked to complete the final step of her task. The black orb also played a significant role in helping to eliminate the demons. During the battle, Seimei was wounded in the shoulder. This time, he decided to end everything. Demand stepped in to block Atsumi and protect Seimei, but failed. Unexpectedly, Seimei's wound began to heal rapidly. He pulled out the final charm from his body and began chanting to summon Tai Shan Fujun. The combination of the midnight worms and Seimei created a large yin-yang circle that enveloped the entire courtyard. Lady Tsuyuko, seeing that Hiramasa was about to be consumed by flames, bravely ran to save him. But Hiramasa was revived in time, and they both escaped danger. When Hiramasa regained consciousness, he explained that while his soul had been residing in the charm, he had clearly heard Seimei's plans. He suddenly realized that Seimei had likely sacrificed his own life to revive him. He quickly rushed to Seimei's side, but it might have been too late. Seimei had already been taken by the large hand of Tai Shan Fujun. Hiramasa was devastated by this. He blamed Seimei for never taking care of himself. Before he could sink too deep into his sorrow, Atsumi attacked him. Hiramasa did not want to fight him, but he remembered Seimei's earlier words. Only Hiramasa could save Atsumi's true self. Demand reminded him that if he could sever Atsumi's horns, there was a chance that Atsumi's human nature would awaken. Hiramasa recalled the memories he had shared with Atsumi. They had once played the flute joyfully together, but now they found themselves in this difficult situation. Hiramasa decided to try and cut off Atsumi's horns, hoping to awaken his human nature. It seemed that Hiramasa was too naive, believing he could change the demon. In an attempt to ensure Hiramasa would never have the chance to be revived again, Atsumi planned to tear him apart into many pieces. Hiramasa asked Atsumi if he hated him so much that he turned into a demon. Why did he continue to praise his talent? Why had he been kind to Hiramasa in the past? Hiramasa still considered him a friend. Deep inside Atsumi, his human nature recognized that this was his friend. But the demon within him didn't see it that way. The demon wanted to kill Hiramasa immediately. When one of Atsumi's horns was severed, it seemed like he regained part of his own will. He admitted that he didn't truly want to kill a friend like Hiramasa, but it was the demon inside him that was driving him to do so, and it kept attacking Hiramasa. Meanwhile, Demand and Yasunori were busy dealing with the demons falling from the sky. They realized that simply fighting each demon one by one wouldn't be effective. They needed to eliminate the source of the problem. Atsumi explained that because he saw Hiramasa as a friend, his hatred and resentment toward Hiramasa's talent grew stronger. However, Hiramasa didn't think of his talent as anything special. He played the flute simply to find joy and satisfy his passion. Hiramasa added that no matter what, he could no longer play the flute. Yet, his refusal to give up the Phoenix Demon's flute became a thorn in Atsumi's side. Since childhood, Hiramasa's simple dream had been to play the flute with Atsumi, and he never forgot the happiness he felt during those times. Lady Tsuyuko tossed Hiramasa a sword, and he quickly severed Atsumi's remaining horn. Demand and Yasunori swiftly handled the remaining demons, leaving only one demon in the royal courtyard. Atsumi, having lost his horns, Atsumi confessed that he too had enjoyed playing the flute with Hiramasa, and had been happy during those moments. However, all of that couldn't overcome the jealousy he felt. In a fit of rage, he bit Hiramasa hard. Hiramasa didn't resist, but calmly explained to him that when he decided to trade his talent to save Seimei, he too had been envious of Atsumi's flute-playing ability. He even felt the greed of the demon rising within him. Since childhood, Hiramasa had possessed an extraordinary talent for playing the flute. He could listen to a song just once and reproduce it perfectly. This ability started to plant the seeds of jealousy in Atsumi's heart. As he grew older, people began praising Hiramasa's talent, claiming that it surpassed even his master's Atsumi. From then on, Atsumi's hatred and jealousy secretly festered, slowly turning him into a terrifying demon. All the evil deeds that followed weren't the work of the demon alone, but of Atsumi's own choices. It wasn't the demon that killed Hiramasa. It was Atsumi himself. Even though he called Hiramasa a friend, he had always hated him deep down. Hiramasa told him that everyone had a demon inside them. If one didn't control it, they could easily turn into something evil. Atsumi admitted that he was still a demon, and despite everything he had done, he couldn't return to being human. He felt great shame, and if things continued this way, he might attack Hiramasa again. Atsumi decided to commit suicide to free himself from the torment. Just as Hiramasa didn't know what to do to stop him, Seimei appeared. He knocked Atsumi's sword away and told him that he could cast a spell to remove the curse from Atsumi. Seimei knew that Hiramasa didn't want that, but before leaving, Seimei asked if he could leave his talent behind for Hiramasa. They played the flute together, and the melody was beautiful. After finishing the duet, Seimei told Atsumi that he probably didn't need to be cursed anymore. Atsumi looked into a mirror and saw that he had returned to his human form. After the events, everyone returned to their usual lives. Hiramasa, Seimei, and Yasunori sat together, drinking wine. While Atsumi traveled the world, Hiramasa asked Seimei how he was still alive. Seimei explained that he had used a man's gossip about him to create a familiar that looked like him. This familiar would take his place to offer sacrifices to the gods. In doing so, those who spoke ill of him would lose a part of their lifespan. It seemed to be a form of karmic retribution for those who wronged him.